Most AI conversations focus on productivity, but the real disruption lies in organizational architecture, we call business architecture. As we move from static models to autonomous agents, the way companies create, deliver, and capture value is being rewritten. Our esteemed panelists will dive into the strategic requirements for an AI-enabled business, leadership alignment, governance, data readiness, and data quality, semantic and contextual layers, and adoption discipline. Please welcome this distinguished panel with a round of applause. All right, I'm going to have each one introduce themselves. I'll start with Sandy because, well, we'll start with Sandy. She's got cool shoes on.
I'm very tall with my shoes on too. Hi, I'm Sandy Steiger. I am the Director for Data and Development at Lithko Contracting. I've been there for 11 months. I started my career 3 years ago in the analytics data science space, so I'm a math data science nerd. I've been that my entire career and enjoy it tremendously. So the idea of AI to me is just the evolution and the advancement of those analytics tools.
Amazing, great. Well, thank you, Sandy, for joining the panel. Tejas.
You got it. So thank you for having me here. First off, Mark, this is a fantastic community here. You know, I can see all the data folks here gathered, and really looking forward to this discussion today. Until very recently, I was with Comerica. I was one of the VPs out there managing the data and AI enablement side of things, reporting to our chief analytics officer. So with some recent M&A activities, I'm no longer with the bank, but I'm transitioning into a new role right now. So that's a quick professional update from my standpoint. But apart from that, I've been in the banking and financial services industry for the last 14 years. All my roles have been very data focused, starting with a lot of reporting that I did, reporting and building reporting capabilities. Very recently, I think for the last 7 odd years, has been focused on just building data and AI ML capabilities for different banking, insurance organizations that I've worked at. And yeah, it's been a fantastic experience so far, and I'm really looking forward to today's discussion, and also looking forward to connecting with you all one-on-one. Thank
awesome.
you.
And you're also a...
And yeah, just to quickly add to that, I'm affiliated with eCornell as well. So this is something that started off 4 years back, where I'm super passionate about teaching and keeping myself updated with all the recent AI and AI/ML trends. So I'm a course facilitator. So if anybody is looking to upscale, going eCornell certification route, those are the courses that I facilitate. Conduct live sessions, for folks like yourself who are looking to upscale. So that's another reason for me to, keep in touch with all the recent advancement that are happening in the space.
And with all of you, please do get connected with Tejas. And eCornell is a great opportunity to get some additional content that is focused and intensified. Okay, we're going to go with Nan next because Todd thought he was next.
Okay, my name is Nan.
You're a tough man to have to follow.
No, I actually you will look good after. So, my name is Nan. That's my user-friendly name. This is how I always introduce myself, and I have a much longer first name, about 10 bytes, right? And today in this AI speed, a lot gets passed by if you just call me by my full name. So anyway, enough about my name. I started the company 20 years ago. This is our 20th year. And I appreciate everyone being able to make it here today. A lot of great energy and conversations in the room. And hopefully Mark will lead us into some more of that as we talk more agents. Our whole world is changing right now with agents, and can't wait to share some of what we know and learn from some of the panelists and all of you here as well.
Awesome, thank you, Nan. And last but not least.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and it's great to see everyone here. So, Todd James, about a year ago, I started a company called Aurora Insights. We focus on working with executive teams, boards, and investor groups around getting value from your AI investments. So everything from strategy to the AI operating model for getting value to implementation. Soon to be a master class on executive AI that'll come out co-branded with another company, and a book that comes out this summer. Prior to that, I led AI at Kroger, Chief Data and Tech Officer at 8451, And before that, across a variety of roles at Fidelity Investments, helped stand up their artificial intelligence capability and was leading all the cross-enterprise AI when I left. My passion, I like how you kind of interjected there. As you can tell from the career, I've run businesses, I've run tech. My passion is the intersection between the two and how you get real value. So I'm excited about the discussion and really happy to be here with y'all.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much. And Zach's in the house. Zach, we haven't seen you in a couple of weeks. Zach just have received his 4th new child under the age of 4, I think. He's been on paternity leave, but I guess he decided you guys were so exciting that he would come see you today, spend the day with us. All right, so let's get into the discussion. Most AI conversations focus on productivity, doing the same things faster, but real disruption isn't productivity, it's organizational architecture. AI is fundamentally changing how companies create, deliver, and capture value. Today we're going to unpack what it actually takes to become an AI-enabled enterprise. I want to start with you, Todd. You mentioned in one of the conversations we had recently, you referenced that 8% of companies are seeing real value from AI. That means 92% are not. What are they doing structurally different?
Yeah, the big separation, and that actually comes from a McKinsey report in January that basically said only 8% of companies are seeing like a 5% contribution to EBIT from their AI investment, which is, as would be expected, but considering how many companies, I think over 80% of companies are saying they're now using AI, it's a little bit troubling. For me, in the observation, the way this manifests itself in the market is you see companies that are going around talking about AI and they're implementing it. They're doing proof of concepts, they're doing point solutions, but they don't scale. The level of value they're getting is restricted to those individual projects. The companies that are really seeing value have something that what I would call the AI operating model. An executive team that understands how AI, so the AI operating model as I define it has a few components, and this is what makes the difference. An executive team that understands how AI can be embedded in their strategy. A program for bringing the workforce along and educating them along the way so they can participate in the journey. A focus on scale. For some reason, as technologists, we lost track of the fact that we actually need to scale with our AI, and we build point solutions. We don't think about reusability. We don't think about componentization as broadly as we should, so there's a technical aspect to that. And then the final one is really a culture, where the companies that are doing well, it is a business discipline where decisions are made based on how can I leverage or enrich my data asset. But it's a change in mindset that happens. And you notice what I didn't talk a lot about? Your one AI use case that you're implementing. It's about implementing that use case, but implementing it in a way that allows you to start to scale that across other applications. And that's where the difference is. And I'd like to say it's more, especially now since leaving Kroger, you talk to hundreds of companies, there's no magic to it. We're missing the easy part, the non-tech, I wouldn't say easy, people are not easy, but we're missing the non-technical aspects of making this work.
I think that's a really good transition to Sandy, because Sandy, you talk about starting with business priorities. So what changes when AI is anchored in outcomes versus your experimentation when you're focused on the business?
You actually gain adoption. So,
yeah.
I would say. But I chuckled when you said reusability, because you're exactly right. I just had that conversation recently that we build a lot of things to use once, and we've not thought through how can we reuse different component pieces. We're talking about AI, but I'm going to go back to when I first started my career. I was doing analytics, so that's dull and basic, right? AI is cool and fancy. But I thought I knew how to answer all the questions that were coming at me, and I did. I answered those questions, but I didn't understand what somebody was going to do with the information or the answer to a question, or why it actually mattered to them. And so I learned a hard lesson back then. I should probably ask better questions up front. I should probably better understand what business problem you're trying to solve before I start to design a solution. And that's where I think a lot of times we go wrong when we start here with the AI. Using AI, as we haven't thought through, which some of what you're saying here too, is what am I using, what do I need AI to solve? Well, actually, don't even say AI, just figure out what is that problem I need to solve. Be able to say, what does the current state environment look like? What do I want the future state to be? And what does that change dynamic need to look like so I can measure the success?
You're implying a word that you haven't said, and it starts with C, context. what is the context that we're trying to address, I think is really important. And the contextual layer or the semantic layer in data preparation, we're gonna talk about that, I think is really key. But understanding the business context, what
Yes.
business problems are we trying to solve? Your point, Todd, tying that capability to business strategy. And that would kind of take me to the North Star that Tejas always talks about. And I really, Tejas, I just want to say Tejas. I just do, because his name is Texas with a J instead of an X. And I'm studying Spanish, and so when I met him, it was Tejas, and he said, no, it's I said, it was Tejas, and he said, no, it's like contagious. Contagious.
Yeah, I've
But the
been in
North
Texas
Star.
for the last 12 years, so
That's good. And actually, I think it means Texas, doesn't it, in Spanish? So, and he lives in Texas, so I just a little.
That's your
editorial
use of
poster.
it.
Yeah. All right. So, Tejas, you call this a North Star problem, what Sandy was talking about. How do you define that in a large enterprise?
yeah, I mean, I think in most cases, right, when we talk about the North Star, it almost sounds like a big aspirational idea. But as long as we're able to tie this back to a business outcome that we want to drive, I think that sort of grounds us pretty well. Just in practice, when I think of a North Star, it could be anything like cost reduction, or revenue growth, or just reducing losses. Those are some of the ideas that we need to stay true to, as opposed to talking that we want to drive. We want to improve customer experience, for example, right? As opposed to saying that, we could say instead that let's improve the conversion rate per interaction, or let's reduce fraud loss per transaction, right? So let's be more specific about our North Star, so that all the business units can then align their different expertise or different problems that they're trying to solve, and then align to this North Star now, which is going to be much more specific and actionable. So I think those are some of the things and experiences I've recently had.
So if you're taking notes, two words have popped out so far: context, that Sandy alluded to, and really alignment. I think alignment of the business requirements and the objectives. Nan, you're the CEO of CoStrategix here, and I know you talk to a lot of CEOs in our customer base. From a leadership perspective, what separates companies using AI defensively versus offensively?
So I don't think those should be seen as two separate things. Most companies have to have defensive strategies to kind of protect your moat, the competitive advantages, your services, any competitive pressures, defray that. That's all part of your defensive strategy. So as offensive, right? There's a lot of opportunities today by infusing AI, LLMs, agents. You can dramatically offer new services, new ways of doing things more efficiently, and kind of circumvent some of your competitors and gain some market share as well. So you really have to look at it as defensive to protect, offensive to go capture something more that you don't have right today. So those are very wide open, and that playing field is really up for grabs.
Oh, that's pretty powerful. When you think about mistakes that are being made now, what are you seeing CEOs do wrong?
Oh, this is it is complex. Even for our own company, we have to transform. Now, let me take a second about transformation itself, because transformation sounds like some kind of a special event that needs to occur. COVID happened, and there was a lot of crisis, and it went away. Everything went back to normal. AI is happening, right? We tend to pay more attention to when news announcements are made, and less attention to when changes are happening in the society. So that is this period right now. There's huge structural changes that's happening. And so transformation itself, in my opinion, is not going to be a defined project-like activity, the start and end date. Transformation will continuously exist, so will uncertainty, right? In the markets, in the geography, a lot of places there's uncertainty. So anyway, taking all these things together, it makes the life of a strategy mapper quite complex. Because what's a 30, 60, 90 day goes away. Because when I can prototype in a week, I used to take 6 months to put out an application, right? we can pretty much give you the application in 2 weeks after you sign the contract. So what's a 30, 60 day, 90-day plan? That kind of things in strategy making is going to shift because you're going to be in a much more rapid cycle. So that's kind of what I'm experiencing even in our own thing and even with businesses. But it's like this new TV which has this shrink wrap. You know, you have to kind of dig in somewhere and kind of pull it off. That's kind of where we are with this AI. You really have to find that, you know, as a leader, where do I start? And you know, it starts with education and so on. But there's a lot more levels to it, a lot more layers to it. But most of the customers I talk to, they dig here a little, they dig here a little. So to speak, the AI, you know, use case, they don't get hold of that shrink wrap to kind of peel it off, right? So that's kind of the complexity everybody is. I have to say that.
That's great. You know, I think as we think about value now, we've talked a little bit about kind of the alignment to the business model. But you know, value doesn't seem to be coming from the models themselves, the LLMs. It's coming from how the organization is engineered or designed, what the business model is. And I want to get started on this question with you, Tejas. You've said real AI value.
Hey
comes
Mark,
from-
I can't believe I'm saying this, but can you hold the microphone a little closer to your mouth? I cannot believe I'm saying this, because you really
All right,
don't need a microphone.
Andy caused this, so now if I'm blowing you out of the room, it's because of Andy.
My fault.
And take a few pictures, Andy, while you're at it, okay? With me holding the microphone up to my mouth, if you don't mind.
You're
Okay.
getting a little soft. You're using your inside voice.
Okay, use my inside voice. Do I have one? Okay. Andy's disrupted my train of thought. Or maybe this, julep has done its work. You said real AI value requires reinventing the business model. What does that actually look like?
Yeah, that's an important question to answer, right? So I think it shows up in two ways. Well, the first is that whatever seemed more expensive, right, it is now no longer expensive because of AI. So you got to think about existing processes, you know, for example, hyper-personalization, right? Personalizing decisions at scale. That was very difficult. Now that now AI has brought that cost down to near zero because of all the experimentation that's happening in the space. So that's first. Second, we no longer have to, you know, we also have to identify the human workflows here, right? So there is that aspect where, as long as you have your existing business processes mapped out and see where there is largely dependency on human workflows, I think those are some of the existing processes that you need to also think of, document, identify, and see where the opportunities lie, right? So at a high level, first is hyper-personalization has become inexpensive, and then documenting all the human workflows, I think that has become very important so that you know where to automate and where not to automate. So that's what I mean when I say that whenever you're thinking of implementing AI in your existing workflows, you also have to somewhat revamp your existing business model. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, this is a kind of a far-fetched example. I'll throw it out, and let's not high center on it. But if you think about Waymo and Uber. So Uber disrupted the transportation as a service business in the taxi world, right? And taxis didn't see it coming, and now they're kind of on the, you know, on the rails. But Waymo is offered now an intelligent driverless car, right? And you see them in certain major cities driving around with no driver. And that is AI in places where you never expected AI to be, right? Where risk is really high, and failure can be catastrophic, and yet it's ready for prime time there. So when we think about our businesses and we think about these offensive opportunities that we've been talking about, when we think about the business model of how our business goes to market and how it manufactures or delivers its services, we really have got to get the C-suite to start thinking about a completely disrupted way of doing that, right? Because if we don't disrupt it ourselves, and that's the conversation we have on a regular basis here, if we don't disrupt ourselves, somebody else is going to disrupt us, and then we're playing catch up while we're out of the game. And so I think that's what you're talking about in terms of the business model has to really be reimagined. But a lot of people are wedded to the way they have done it for the years they've done it, especially in larger organizations. That's going to be painful. How can we as technology, as AI leaders, as data leaders, how can we make an impact in the thinking cycles of folks who have run the brick and mortar for decades, right? How can we make that impact? I know we're calling the issues around but we were talking to, and Sam, we were talking to Marco's Pizza. It's one of our big clients. And they're trying to figure out how to disrupt themselves with AI, recognizing that if they don't, they're gonna be playing catch up in a game that's already sharply competitive in the pizza business. And they have some great products. Nan, we're seeing a shift from projects to AI-enabled workflows. What's the difference? How is that changing delivery and pricing?
So behind me is the HR room, right? So that's kind of a representation of all the talent that we have in-house. Now, don't be surprised to see another owner, like an agent resources manager in every company, right? So there'll be an agent onboarding, there'll be an agent evaluation. But the good thing is there's no agent salary increase or anything like that. And the agent will work the same way you're on your. So basically, this is how agents are going to permeate every institution, every organization. So think of an agentic layer. You got your infrastructure, the cloud, your data, and all of that. Then you got your human layer. In between that is an agent layer that's going to become a constant. And so now we're going through that process of figuring that out, how it'll exactly fall into place. It may fall a little differently than how we anticipate, but that's kind of the characteristic of the question, right, that you're asking. But how that impacts, there's going to be a lot of operational efficiencies for sure, right? And there is the real challenge today is the context. We all carry that context in our head. Your databases, data cloud, data lakes don't carry that context to that extent, we know. So that prevents your AI agents from becoming so much more effective today. But over a period of time, I have 2 customers right now who want us to build a contextual layer on top of their data lake. And so you go pull all the tacit knowledge in different documents and you kind of teach it. Once you do, you're beginning to use AI more and more, so it drives significant operational efficiencies. But again, embedding that, productizing that, all of those are still complexities today, which the industry is working very, very rapidly. Every day we see new announcements, the stock price either goes up or tanks down, then you know something big is happening there. So that's kind of.
So thanks, Nan, for that answer. Todd, does that mean margins are compressing, or are they expanding for those who get it right?
I think it depends on how you implement, but I think the opportunity it depends on the industry. So I'll give you one example. I've been speaking a lot with the investor community in software as a service. Margins there are definitely compressing. That business model is under significant pressure, and there's a hypothesis that whilst you'll see some consolidation in that space, the companies, when they do win, a lot of the work that's per seat basis is going to go away from those large software as a service providers. So I think you have certain industries that really need to take a pretty aggressive focus on innovation and a focus on cost reduction if they want to be able to preserve their margins. I think overall, though, across the industry, and this is the example that I love, I was recently, I was in Istanbul and I was speaking, and the best part of doing that's when you don't speak and you listen to others and you learn. And there was a tech CEO, and they were asking her, are you going to reduce costs? How are you going to capture margin? Almost the same question, Mark. And she said, I am not letting people go. I am going to out-feature, outpace, out-innovate my competition with the existing workforce. So I think there are huge margin creation opportunities, but I think it requires, and this goes back to your point, Tejas, it requires a different business model. So
Let's talk about a business model that you're familiar with from a retail lens. How are customers and revenue models changing there?
yeah, I think there's 2 things. One is
From a revenue lens, how are customer and business revenue models changing there? That was for you, Andy.
I never dreamed I would not be able to hear you.
there we go.
I work for Andy, so that's why he stopped saying.
I do want to say before I answer the question, I do think we reached a moment that I never thought I would see earlier when Mark was at a loss for words. So thank you, Andy.
Applause for Andy, please.
on the retail, I'll get back to your question. Two things are happening. It's already happening across the large companies, and it's the 8451 model. The ability to monetize data that you take from a legacy business and to be able to convert that into increased margins, increased customer flow. And by the way, I'm talking with a media company, a large branded media company, 40 years of content, discrete audiences. The same opportunity exists in other markets. So I think we'll see that trend continue, at least across those that have a rich data asset. The biggest thing facing retail, where I'm getting a lot of calls and a lot of pressure, is the investment community is very interested in this. Grocery retail boards are interested in this, and that is called agentic commerce and what that means. The good news is the stage is early, but the way this works is instead of going on your Kroger app and making your order and being in a captive defined journey that Kroger is able to control and to provide promotions and opportunities are, the opportunity in the future is likely to be you get on ChatGPT or Claude, you type in some themes, they generate your order, they validate it with you, and then they pick based on different characteristics where they route that order. That is a huge risk in the existing. Now it's early, things could change, but the risk to retailers and why they're so concerned and why the business model can shift is in grocery retail, one, you compete on customer experience. In that situation, you compete on fulfillment. It becomes more operational. Your very business model changes. Two, if you have a retail media network, the way margins work in grocery and retail, it's about 3 to 4% margin for most retail. Grocery drop down to 1 to 2 and you're happy. But if you have a retail media network, depending on how well you operate that, you get 40 to 70% margin in that area of the business. How many ads do you see on ChatGPT? So there is significant disruptive risk in the grocery retail that I think is one of the biggest issues. Now, the good news is no one's really figured it out and things could change.
Someone will. Someone will, absolutely. And as we're talking about this, I want to go to Sandy. You know, how are organizations, you mentioned this, Todd, kind of, and in that case, actually monetizing their data?
Yeah, I think that a lot of organizations believe they're ready, but they're not, and they're not ready because they haven't focused on actually building the solid foundation of the data, right? So, in talking about even when I said, oh, well, if you focus on the right problems to solve for your organization, AI adoption will come. If your internal people do not trust the data that you're providing them, the insights you're providing them from their data, you're not ready to monetize your data, right? And even today, I will get questions, I'll get hey, this report is wrong, and then when I dig into it, it turns out, oh, so when you entered that number into the system, oh, I see, it actually was, we typed in the PO number or the invoice number instead of the actual revenue value of that. I got it, okay, so now how do we fix that? So it's a lot of the end user becomes the problem because they don't understand, like they're part of the problem of not, I don't have good data, because we're not putting the data governance on top of that, right, to check and make sure we have proper standards and governance practices around it. And then another piece of that is, do we have an external customer problem we can solve with our data? Because if we don't, then we're not ready to monetize our data either, right?
Absolutely. Todd, thoughts on that? You have something to add?
No, I'm learning. You mean sometimes people enter data wrong and then.
Never happens at your
It is a
company.
very surprising thing.
Usually very self-assured way, right?
Yeah.
Very self-assured way. All right,
First
well,
words?
this panel is going to get really interesting, and I'll tell you why. Because Jessica just brought me a glass of a clear liquid, which I thought was water. But this is straight tequila. So we're about to throw one back. Okay? I'm just kidding. It's ice water, but I made a nice joke. All right, so let's keep rolling along with the panel. Sandy, this one is going back to you.
Oh, good.
You did such a great job. If the data and infrastructure are the bottlenecks, if data and infrastructure are the bottlenecks, what's holding organizations back?
So AI definitely, and we've talked about this, right? I think, Todd, you've answered this question too. AI has the potential to disrupt a lot and to completely change business models. And I actually don't think it's the data necessarily. Well, there's elements of the data that are holding us back, right? Because we don't have the right foundation. But suppose that you do, right? You have solid data, you have good data quality. AI moves fast, okay? I can get an answer immediately. Are you ready to make a decision that quickly? Because most organizations aren't ready to move that fast, right? So there's I think a lot of what it comes down to is your organization ready? Are they evolved enough? Are they agile enough to actually move with AI, right? Are we prepared with who owns the outcomes of what's coming from out of the AI system, right? And what does that mean? What are the implications for myself, for my customers, for others, right? What does that mean for our organization? What are the benefits and the harms, the pros and the cons? And I think there's an element of change management associated with all of this too, right? We have organizations, I think you've alluded to this, we've all kind of alluded to this, organizations are, I know how to operate my organization in this way, and I'm incentivized, I've always been incentivized to operate in this way. AI comes in and disrupts it. I don't know how to implement, what is my incentive strategy around that, right? How do I think about the implementation of that from that angle? So I think that's more of what's holding us back right now. Elements of data and infrastructure, but there's a huge piece of it is, are we ready for the disruption that's coming, and are we able to move as fast as we need to?
Yeah, and I think that's interesting, Nan. You talk about now in sort of the reimagining of the data cloud or the data landscape, a couple of things that are really important. And we have a client, one is a software as a service client, who we're working with in this reimagined way to use an agentic approach to manage master data. So instead, and lead that into the data governance lane with agents that are autonomous, not human, to really curate the data. Can you speak a little bit, Nan, to what the opportunity or the potential is there?
Yeah, I think there is a whole playbook or a blueprint to kind of elevate your data organization and augment that with agents, right? So there is, it's a document that we will be publishing here shortly. But it's that whole layer, the agentic layer I talked about between your data pipelines, all your visualization tools, data science models. There's an agentic layer, and then there's a human consumption layer, and also the engineering and data quality and so on. So you can use a lot of these products that you use, say Informatica, all of those have some of these agents being infused right now. But more so, even as you write your own pipelines and things like that, you could use agents to go do that. And all these agents have like a reasoning capability and then an act capability. Whereas your code that you used to write with pipeline can only crunch data, right? And it's kind of development time, what was taught it'll do. Whereas these agents can think and reason differently every time there's a context that is changing for it. So it's almost like having paying someone to sit and watch and pull data from there and copy it here. As humans, we get bored, but agents can do a phenomenal job on that.
Interesting. So, staying with that theme, Nan, what role does semantic or the semantic or the context layer play in actually unlocking the value of data in the AI agentic age?
So you got AI, your Gen AI, and then you have agents. That's kind of how I see in one continuum for this at least conversation. AI, ML models, data science models, those were some of the things we could do. I needed good curated data sets to drive those values. Gen AI, we started doing some vibe coding and things like that. Then came RAG, where we could feed our database. I'll say if I feed a database of 2 million rows, right, on any particular, say, transaction table, and if I ask some questions, after about 20, 30 questions, it will begin to hallucinate. It will not remember the context that much. So you simply cannot feed a big RAG database and expect AI to just answer all your questions properly. So now many companies, Copilot and Power BI has a natural language querying capability. That's kind of the problem with it. You can, just feed that vector database, it's not going to do the job. So then what is the gap, right? The gap is really a context gap. Whether I call something as a lifetime value or a customer churn ratio, those are, kind of two sides of the same meaning that we are trying to derive. You need to be able to teach that context to the agentic models. If you can teach that context, then it begins to behave a lot more better. So that's kind of where companies who got a pretty good data foundation going, of course there will be data quality issues and data may not all be in that, but still that doesn't guarantee use of AI and success coming from that. You really have to supplement that with the context layer. For that you have to have a good semantic layer, and then you go in search of where all context exists. Where are the experts in the company? Where are the documents? How do they talk? There is a colloquial speak within the company, right? To refer to something, I want to know how the finance team talks about it, how the marketing team talks about it. And I want to give that context so that way the agent refers to the context layer, then it finds a map, then it goes to the data and kind of responds to you, right? And so when it does it that way, the answers are going to be much more pointed. And at that point, humans can begin to take their hands off of the thing once you have that, the validation of that piece. So.
Can I say something
Yeah,
here? Because
absolutely.
for some reason I have a very, sometimes I get compelled, and I got compelled. I'm living this right now, and I'll say what's breaking for us is actually the trust is breaking, because we don't have a semantic layer. We haven't defined what the relationships mean between all of this data, but people are using this agent because they can. They can build their own co-pilot agent, they can ask questions, and it's giving them an answer, and then they get pissed at me because the response isn't the right response, and they don't understand, and how did you allow us to use something like this? And I keep coming back to, we haven't built the right semantic layer. We don't have a semantic layer built. We haven't taught these agents what all of the what this means, building on that. And so it feels so back to the foundation, the fundamentals of, you can build all of this beautiful data warehouses, beautiful data marts and data sets, but if you haven't told this system, this AI, what these things mean, why there's a relationship between them, it'll answer your question, it'll
Right.
always answer your question, but it might not give you a response that makes any bit of sense.
That's really a key point, and I know Tejas has a comment on it. I want to go to him because he's been itching to get in on this topic as well. He's teaching,
I mean,
but I want somebody to throw into this conversation. One of you, the graph database aspect to this problem of the contextual layer and the semantic model, because I don't think people yet are really embracing that technology solution in the solution to this particular challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I can take a stab at it. Learned a little bit about graph databases. Very important, to everybody's point here, right? When we talk about understanding that colloquial knowledge, that's different for different organizations. I think that's where graph databases come into play, where you start to understand the association between these different data assets and how they talk and communicate with each other, right? So I think that's where graph databases are extremely powerful, and I know big tech, they're already using a lot of this technology and this framework to go about building that strong contextual layer. Perplexity is doing it, big tech, or you name it, everybody's kind of experimenting and researching in that space. It hasn't gotten to banking and that side of the business yet, but I think slowly, steadily, everybody is going to start using that, because otherwise your BI is going to be completely useless, without that layer in between that understands the relationship, association, because that's going to be fundamental to a lot of AI that we're going to use. The Gen AI that we're going to use to then talk to your data, right?
Yeah, it's the knowledge graph concept, and that's a term, if you haven't heard it, make a note, look it up, study it out. So it's not, the issue isn't intelligence, the knowledge graph is really important, we've established that. It's the context, it's the quality in that discipline. But yet, Sandy, you were saying a lot of organizations haven't put that in place yet, right? And so now the question becomes, how do we make that happen as an infrastructure, the infrastructure necessary for AI? So what is an agent operating system in practical terms? Who wants to take that question? What's an agent operating system? Man, do you want to jump on that?
Yeah, I mean, like, there's a human operating system. I kind of alluded to this earlier. So there is going to be an agent of a reflection of the human system, which may not do everything the human does, but the agent operating system will help the human layer significantly, right? And to that point, there'll be an agent resource manager, because think about it, like, you know, there's so many products coming, so many agents. How are you going to buy all that and make it all work together? So there'll have to be some kind of governance. Who lets the agent in, and what does that agent do? All of those kind of things. And so there is going to be, you know, shared responsibilities, like what humans used to do. That's going to go away in many cases altogether. Some cases half of it. But then we'll all have to elevate to a next level. Instead of pulling all data and then looking at reports, right? The agent will just tell you what to do. And to Sandy's point, are you kind of ready to make the next decision? You've got the data, like no more data wrangling. You've got what you were looking for the last 5 years. You were struggling with it, and now you can just text something, you know, and it'll respond back and say, hey, yeah, you need to make an investment here, shift this investment away, that kind of thing, right? So really, a layer that sits between human and infrastructure that is very tightly coupled with humans, very indistinguishable from a person working in a cubicle, right? It's kind of the value what these agents will add. And how do we kind of, you know, bring that in? We have to, because everybody else will, you know, use that from efficiency standpoint to begin with, and then also to drive revenues and whatnot. So that's really how, you know, I think.
Todd, what changes when AI is treated as an infrastructure instead of a tool?
I think there's a few things. You can take this in a lot of ways, but I'll take a vector on what it means from an organization perspective. The beauty of being able to have AI as an infrastructure is your incremental costs for deploying new capabilities go down dramatically. Better, faster, cheaper, gives you greater opportunity to respond quicker to the marketplace. So I think that's vector one. Vector two, we've talked about reinventing business models. I'm not going to go there. I'm going to go a different angle too. Right now we're talking about agents and isolated at process level. But if you go out 2 to 3 years, the idea of agents that reason, agents that act, agents that control become very insufficient. You need agents that monitor, agents that integrate, agents that collect and harvest. You'll be able to create new data assets on top of that. So I think the ecosystem around the agent architecture right now is still pretty much in its very early stages. It's going to allow us to move faster as a business, but the curve for doing that and the benefits that we get are going to be very exponential as we look forward.
Well, I kind of think that Pratik said it really well, and you just really gave structure to it. Swarms of agents. You see swarms of agents across the enterprise with different roles that are functionally deployed, but that infrastructure is necessary to create that capability.
Yeah, and I don't know, it'd be interesting if you're looking at that. The question that comes to mind as we start to get swarms, and you see a little bit with what the military is doing, the ability to monitor across those systems. The other thing too, I'm sitting here as a former CTO, CDO, I'm like, how much data is going to spin off there, and how can I monetize that data? Or if it's not external monetization, how can I use that data to improve aspects of how I operate as a business? How do I harvest that data? Is that something you're looking at in your tool? Is that on the path? And if you've already solved it, you're going to get a lot of funders in here tonight.
You have to stretch a little more.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Get up.
You might get up. Might go get a chair and sit up here.
I guess like the ways I think about it, and I'll answer in terms of construction, and like a generalist way, it's kind of hard for me to say it, but like, let's take construction for example. There's different components of what goes into like running a project, right? Into running a timeline, into whatever that might look like. Essentially siphoning data out of these systems for each of these components. Like an example of this is, like construction has a lot of RFIs, right? Being able to automate, and not automate's not the right word, being able to like agentically take all of that data from that one positioning and then actually use it for like a broader report. Another example of this would be within submittals, which is another part of construction. You could continue to go. So in terms of like the swarms of agents, it's like taking the data out and then being able to monitor it across the board through like that's what I was trying to say about like a generalist agent, being able to like monitor that across the board based off of the specific ones that are taking the data. So like in terms of regulation, you know exactly what agent is within the organization and where it's trying to get the data from. So you're able to monitor that. But then in terms of actually taking the data and the whole process of actually like, cleaning it, doing whatever needed to it, creating the semantic layer like you were talking about, all of that can be done by like an agent who has all the data fed to it, if that makes sense.
That answer your question?
It did.
All right, awesome.
You can drop the mic, I'm done.
You mean you want to give your chair to him? Let him?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I mean, give him mine. All right, so let's keep this rolling because we're getting close to the end. Sandy said something that I thought as we were talking about the panel made a lot of sense, She said, it's like we're running with scissors when it comes to AI. What are the biggest risks so that we're not running with scissors?
So I want to be really clear. When I say we're running with scissors, that does not mean that I think AI is super dangerous, okay? I do think that AI could be used maliciously. I'd like to believe that everyone in this room never has an intention of doing that, right? So when I say that we're running with scissors, we're running to what we hear, right? Todd, you said like 90% of organizations say they're using AI, but only 8% feel like they're getting any value from it. You hear, we're using AI, we're using AI, we're using AI. So everyone then says, we better be doing AI, right? So we're rushing to put AI in, or use AI within our organization, and we don't even know what we're doing, why we're doing it, right? And again, I think there's a tremendous value here. We can speed up delivery, right? I no longer have to take 6 months to build a product. I can actually speed that up to be weeks, right? Or I can prototype a hell of a lot faster, sorry. I usually say a lot worse than that. But like we can go a lot faster, but are we being smart about it? And that's the piece where I say we're running with scissors, because we're not taking the 2 seconds, the 5 seconds to pause and ask ourselves the hard questions of, why do we need it? What's the purpose of it? What problems are we solving? Who will this benefit? And sometimes who will this hurt, right? A lot of times what you find in organizations too is there's the fear of, if we use AI in this thing, I don't have a job. And I love hearing what you heard in Istanbul, where that woman said, I'm not getting rid of people, I'm gonna get more out of them because we have AI, right? Better things, more value added. And I think that's where I come to with running with scissors, is we're not oftentimes ready for what it's capable of, and that's what scares me.
Yeah, it's interesting, and that's where our brick and mortars are. But let's take the flip side of this, Tejas. I want to throw this question to you. We were just at Gartner's Data World event down in Orlando, and I heard somebody in one of the presentations say that a company started, they had 300 employees, of which 10 were human, and the other 290 were agents. And the company was doing an insanely large amount of revenue, and the revenue per human employee was gargantuan, right? So if you built an AI native enterprise from scratch, what would you do?
Yeah, I think you're going to see more of that, right? Solo founder companies just running with agents to just automate or simplify processes. You're going to see a lot of that in the upcoming years. But when we think about AI native companies, what comes to mind is a lot of big organizations, when they think about AI and automation in general, they think about systems, right? But I think the other side to that is if you think about decision flows, right, and try to think of an AI native company actually would try to disrupt in that space. I think that makes more sense to me personally, where you're trying to automate and optimize for decision flows rather than building AI around systems like CRM applications, reporting frameworks, and so on, right? So I think that's where a lot of this is going to be commoditized at some point, where as long as it goes back to what I said earlier, and some of the folks here touched on that as well, right? As long as you have a decent understanding of what your existing business process looks like, it's going to be just building, wrapping AI around decision flows to then just just speed things up, right? And then also at the same time managing risk, to which Sandy alluded earlier, right? I think that has to be there. Like, how do you manage risks around these decision workflows, and how do sort of simplify that along the way? But I think, yeah, when I think about AI native companies, I think a lot of that revolves around decision flows and how do you kind of go and build from that point on.
Can I add on? Because I love where you're going with it. And I love the fact that at Gartner's conference, the measure they used was revenue per employee for a startup. I don't think we should be thinking about metrics like that just for startups. We talked earlier about all the claims. And as I mentioned, I talk a lot with the investment banks, and they're trying to figure out, how do you see through the earnings call? Where are they telling tales? And the story, and it's not a perfect measure, but the measure I tell them to look at is revenue per employee as a starting point. It's not a perfect measure, but if you're saying you're making material investments in AI and you're not moving that, you're lying, or you're covering up for some other bigger operational efficiency. So I tell the investors to dig in. But I think companies that start to look, they should be looking at some of these simple operating measures, of which revenue per employee is one. That doesn't belong just to AI natives. That should be part of every company. If you talk to that woman in Istanbul, she told a story that was basically boiled down from this beautiful story that inspired us to revenue per employee.
That is a really important measure, and we look at that here at CoStrategix as well as we begin to adopt AI in our engineering disciplines and practices. Tejas, I want to stay with you on this idea of the guardrails in a regulated environment. So what kind of, as you think about AI deployments, and you come from banking and insurance, what are some of the important guardrails that have to be there? And how can an organization in such an environment avoid over-correcting or over-governing, to constrain the value?
Yeah, so I see two questions there, so let me take the first one, right? So when we talk about guardrails, I think three things to keep in mind, right? One is the decision boundaries. I think clarity on that, where you need agents, where you don't. That's number one. Number two could be just understanding your existing processes, right? Where you need to have a complete understanding of what that business process looks like. And then third, you should definitely think of where you can give humans the permission to override things, right? So I think three things come to mind when we think about guardrails. And also, like, very recently, I was reading a bunch of articles. So one article kind of stood out, and that I'd like to share with the group here. I came across this rule of two for agents. So what that means is, when we talk about automation in general with the help of agentic frameworks, right? So you shouldn't give agents permission to more than two, right? So basically, the first rule is, if your agent is accessing sensitive data, right? If that's the case, then that's your rule one. Rule two is it taking uncertain inputs, from all over the place? That could be rule two. Rule three is your agent taking decisions now, right? Doing external actions based on the previous two inputs. So if you're checking 2 out of this 3, you're safe. If you're checking 3 on 3, then you're probably in the risk or danger zone, right? So that's a really good simple framework that I found very interesting. That I'm seeing that more and more companies have started to implement. So that's something I wanted to share with the group here. Would love to hear thoughts, comments.
Any comments on that? We're getting close to the close because I saw Audrey go like this. The high sign. But before we do go across that closing finish line, are you guys enjoying this, by the way?
Yeah.
Getting any good stuff out of it?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. There's a human in the loop idea, man, versus a human on the loop idea, and I think this speaks a little bit to what Tejas was saying. Can you clarify those things? And then, does everybody know what RAG means? What that word actually means? RAG, R-A-G.
Yeah.
Retrieval Augmented Generation, which is where the LLM is able to go out to external sources and bring information in to augment the generation of the result. But I know we throw terms around a lot, and so I found it helpful. But anyway, on the loop versus in the loop, man.
Yeah, I think it's just a pattern of how you deploy agents. So most of us are leaders here. So let's say you hired somebody new on your team, and this person is running around meeting everyone and having one too many meetings. A thought goes to your mind, what is this person doing, right? He's having so many interactions, right? So it is that same feeling you will have when agents stop talking to each other. You will not be there to listen to all of those agents, and they all have autonomy. They have as much autonomy as your team lead that you hired on your team, right? So you won't be privy to that, but yet you have to trust what ultimate outcome that it is leading you to, right? So that requires some kind of a pattern where I want to stay in the loop. If you are modifying some parameters on a heat exchanger, and if you made something some issue with that, you could blow it up. And I want to be in the loop. So that's the HITL, they call it, right? The human in the loop. Human on the loop is you kind of go do the thing, like let's say I build an agent, it kind of detects my printer ink is out, and then it goes to Kroger.com and places an order for that. So it's an agent buying some product, right? That's okay if it did that, because I have some guardrails. Don't buy more than 6 of these in a year or something, right? So that is human. I mean, just notify me, send me a text so that I'm on the thing, and I could monitor that. These are very basic still and very nascent. This is going to emerge into much more complex categories. We haven't seen the power of these yet and the problems of these things yet, right? So both of those will shape how these architectures will pattern.
Awesome. Well, we're down to the final question, and this is just an open question for each panelist, a prognostication of what you see in your crystal ball with the agentic AI movement. So we'll start with Tejas at the end and just work our way back.
Yeah, that's a good one. So, I mean, like I think like Nan was talking about, right? So the agentic commerce, I think that's super interesting to me, and I mean, it's going to happen. We just don't know what that frequency is going to look like, how often we will be using agents to go out shop for us, buy tickets, plan our travel, all of that. That definitely is going to happen. And then, you'll have agents from our side, right, as consumers, and then you will have agents from the organizations who are selling products and services. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic really plays out out in the market, and then how economies of scales are going to be impacted by that. I don't know. I mean, the honest answer is I don't know. But again, goes back to that. This is also a broader question about ethics, governance, all of those things kind of also play into this. But yeah, I'm excited, but I'm also kind of this is also something that I think of. Like how this is going to play out. Jobs and this and that. So those are kind of things I think about, and is what my prediction would be. That's going to happen, but how it's going to play out in the market is going to be interesting to see.
Sandy?
Yeah, I actually like your last response there, which was, I don't know. Because when GenAI, ChatGPT launched, what was that, October 2023 or whatever that date was, right? All the things that we're doing today, we shouldn't still be doing, because AI was supposed to do most of them, right? So I'm being a little bit facetious there, I guess. But I think there's elements of, there's still so much that we don't know and what's possible, but I'm in the construction space, and I see what some of these guys are doing on a day-to-day basis, week-to-week basis, and they have hundreds of jobs, and they are scheduling tons of people on those jobs, and they're doing it by hand. Like for me, thinking about all of these retail stores, right? My son he works at KFC, and he was telling me how they do it on a lot of it is on paper. They don't even use an app. What the hell's wrong? Like, we're not even using an app here. But things like that, where those mundane tasks, like the things you hate about your job, to me, I see those things going away. Like, I don't even want to be here anymore because I hate this piece of my job. Those are the sorts of things that I'm hoping to see will start to go away. Yeah.
Future. Good. Todd?
Yeah, it's funny, the pace, I don't think any of us in our crystal ball can pick a spot and hope to be accurate, but I do think there's a trend that's hard to argue with, and the trend is the marginal cost of innovation is going through the floor, and it's continuing to. Zeropreneurs, the ability to create a new business, to disrupt an industry at low cost and at pace is unparalleled. So I think we're gonna, my trend, we're gonna see massive disruption. And the good news is the tools, the capabilities are available to startups, they're available to digital natives, they're available to legacy companies. The choice becomes, are you gonna be disrupted or are you gonna disrupt? But if you're not thinking about that marginal cost of innovation going down and what that can mean to your business model, you're likely disrupted.
Man,
That's hard to be. For me, I think it's how AI will permeate in physical space. Like you had to build very purpose-built robots to kind of do some things in industrial setting and so on. We're very close to a universal robot which walks around in your home, and you can say, hey, look at this. This is how you lift this. A cup with the right kind of pressure, or cut a watermelon, or fold the clothes and put it here, all by color coding, whatnot. However you want, right? You can just show because the LLM is integrated into the robot, and you can just show what you want to teach, and as you teach, it just performs it with that same dexterity, right? So that's going to be huge. About $4,000. My wife would buy one, right? Instantly, and I would buy one for her. It'll save me a lot of productivity. So.
well, thank you, Nan. And I'll just close with this thought. I was thinking about, last year I planned a big trip to Europe, and I decided not to use a travel agent. I went to a lot of countries, and I just thought, well, maybe I could just use ChatGPT to do it for me. So I did, and it did everything. And the only thing that it didn't do was buy my tickets. But this year it can buy my tickets. And so, why wouldn't I even use it to go that far? But I was thinking the other day, we have an executive assistant and she's pretty busy. Nan and I both keep her pretty busy. And I was thinking, well, why don't I just create an executive assistant that can do some of the stuff that I asked Lindsay to do using ChatGPT. And so I did a prompt. I said, I want you to be my executive assistant. I'm going to give you a name, and I'm going to give you tasks, and I want you to do them. And one of the things that I really hate doing is cleaning up my email box on Nan. It's not on our corporate email. This I hate on my Gmail, my personal Gmail box. I can never keep caught up on it. So I said, why don't you go in and clean up all the junk in my inbox and just make it, bring the things up that I need to see. And I need to have this presentation created in PowerPoint or whatever. And then I need to do this. And it handled all those tasks for me. And there were some discrepancies in the results. But I got so much further down the path. And it was just an idea that occurred to me. Can I use AI to do this?
You have to finish the story though. After 48 hours, the bot quit and went to a different employer because he had two different jobs.
Yeah, and that's when I put the mic down, started doing push-ups while you guys applaud these guys. All right.